I have a member of our community on today's episode. We're going to call her Stacy. Before you hear Stacy's interview, you need something women rarely get. In fact, I know that women rarely get it because I interviewed over 200 women on this podcast, and they all said the same thing. I wish someone would have told me what was really happening, so I didn't spend months or years trying to make sense of the confusion. After those interviews, I developed a framework so that you would know what these 200 women wished they knew before they went through another circular conversation, before they spent years in couple therapy, and before they doubted themselves even one more time. If you're wondering if your husband's lying to you, you don't need any more conversations that go nowhere. You need answers fast. So if you suspect that your husband is lying, I pulled together a series of videos that will give you clarity after betrayal. I call it a workshop because it lays out a framework for what every woman I interviewed said she wished she knew sooner. It'll help you recognize when you're having a conversation that's intended to confuse you and see what other women wished they'd seen sooner. Because if your husband's lying, it's not your fault you don't see it. But you might be seeing some unmistakable patterns that mean that he's lying. Like number one, if he pauses after you ask him a simple question, or if you ask him a simple question and he just stares into space. That pause, that stare indicate that he's trying to figure out what he's going to say that will make him look good and keep you in the dark. Number two, your overreacting deflection. Women told me about how he deflected the focus of the conversation off of what he was doing and onto her tone, her timing, blaming her for what happened, which was just more lying. In Stacy's story, here's how that went down.
It still just kept falling apart. And then I heard him one time on the phone, and I'd heard him saying things that really sounded wrong. Like he was saying, we just met the wrong way. We can't continue our relationship. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's talking to a girl. And he is having an affair.
We'll get to her story, but real quick. Number three, his polished image. Most of the women I interviewed said that it was hard to discover their husband's lying because he looked so good, not just to her, but to everyone. He seemed deeply spiritual. He was charming and respected. He was responsible. He, quote unquote, could never hurt anyone. And he seemed values driven. This is why his lying was so difficult to comprehend. You'll hear in Stacy's story, and most of the women I interviewed said this, it's really hard to trust yourself when your husband is lying. So women often think like, maybe I misunderstood, or am I too sensitive? But here's the truth. You don't start questioning your reality unless someone is actually destabilizing it. If your husband's lying, he's creating confusion constantly. And so it's natural for a woman to doubt herself, but that doubt isn't a flaw. It's actually a signal. My After Betrayal Workshop is only $27. It gives you the exact tools women told me they wish they knew before they went to therapy or clergy or even friends and family for help after they found out about their husband's lies. Go to btr.org/clarity to find out more. All right, Stacy, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Start at the beginning. Did you recognize your husband's behaviors as abuse at the time when you began your relationship with him?
No, not at all. You were the first one that made me ever even consider it abusive, just from listening to your podcasts. Before that had never even crossed my mind.
Let's start with that then. What types of behaviors were you experiencing that led you to want to seek some help?
Well, he had an affair. About 5 years after the affair, things just weren't really moving forward. And I couldn't really figure out why. And that is the first time where I'd even heard the term gaslighting. And that's when I really started to search more for answers. And I realized the extent of what had happened and how I had been totally emotionally and psychologically and spiritually abused. And just the extreme gaslighting that had gone on and was still going on.
Had that gaslighting and manipulation happened throughout your whole marriage? Once you looked back, did you recognize that it had been happening the whole time?
For sure. I discovered he had been looking at pornography just about a month after we'd been married. And I think that's when I realized I didn't marry who I thought I had, but I felt stuck. Because actually the next day after I found out he had been looking at pornography, I found out I was pregnant. And that's when I just thought, there's nothing I can do. I'm stuck.
So what persona had he crafted to manipulate you?
Well, he's super spiritual and we did all the religious things. And I just thought that I had married a spiritual, religious, truthful person. I didn't think that he was capable of the lies and betrayal that ensued.
So how long between you discovering porn a month after you're married and when you discovered the affair? Was that I'm guessing that was like 10 years or something,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, 10 years.
oh,
Mhm.
see, I've become
Yep.
a
You're good.
psychic now that
Yep.
I've been doing this for so long. So 10 years, and how did you discover the affair?
Our marriage was just falling apart. I could not explain why. I couldn't figure out what was wrong. I thought it was me. He had told me throughout the our marriage that like I was too mean and he wasn't attracted to me, stuff like that. So I thought, it's just me. We ended up moving. I thought maybe it was our neighborhood. We moved across the state, and after we moved, nothing changed. And it still just kept falling apart. And then I heard him one time on the phone, and he was talking to someone, and I just heard him saying things that just really sounded wrong. Like he was saying, we just met the wrong way. We can't continue our relationship. We just started off wrong. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's talking to a girl and he is having an affair. Because it had crossed my mind, and I had brought it up to him before, asking him if he had an affair. I said, my brother and his friend actually said that it sounds like you're having an affair. And he was just so defensive about it and was just like, I can't believe your brother would ever accuse me of that. That's so ridiculous. I can't believe you'd ever think that. And to be now looking back, he was having an affair at that exact moment. But he was so good at just making me think I was crazy to even consider that. So anyway, I overheard him on the phone and I thought, oh my gosh, he really is having an affair. And he turned the corner and saw me listening to him, and his face just said it all. It just absolutely said it all. But he talked his way out of it. I said, who are you talking to? And he just stared at me. And then finally, like a half an hour later, he finally answered and said, it was a guy from work. I just feel really bad because I was talking about me and you and how we started off wrong and how we were just friends and shouldn't have gotten married. But so that was my first clue. And then later on, I found him texting her about a month later.
It took him a minute to figure out a story to tell you that he thought you would believe, one that made you look bad.
Absolutely. Yep.
Let's talk about that stare for a minute. He just stares at you in space, right? For a little bit. Kind of a lack of blinking, would you say? Sort of a flat affect on his face?
Yeah, absolutely.
Had you seen that ever in your marriage before?
I guess from time to time, I can recognize it now for what it was. To me, it's so obvious now looking back on it. Like, of course, he's trying to come up with a story. Why wouldn't he just answer me if he didn't have anything to hide? But I wanted his story to be true. So I would accept it because it was so much easier to think, okay, he's not having an affair. It's okay. It's just me. I'm the one that needs to change.
I saw this stare recently with a neighbor kid, which I thought was really interesting. So he had been singing a very off-color song, and my son picked up on it and he was singing it. I'm not sure he knew what he was saying, my son. So when this neighbor kid came over, I said, hey, that song is not okay. You cannot sing it around my kids. You shouldn't be singing it at all. This is a 9-year-old kid. Okay. He stares at me with this blank stare for a minute, for a while, doesn't say anything, nothing. And then after, I don't know how long, he says, oh, that song's about social distancing. And I was like, no, that's a lie. That's not true. You just took a minute to come up with what you thought was a plausible story, but that's not the truth. You need to go home. And I just sent him home because I was like, I'm done. This is ridiculous. I think it's interesting that an adult man, 40 years old, 50 years old, is still doing that.
Right.
And thinking, okay, if I don't make any moves, like no sudden movements for a second, right? I need to get my story straight. Like they're not thinking about you in that moment, how they hurt you or anything about you. All they're thinking is, what is she going to believe? It takes some energy. That's why they're sort of frozen there for a second because there's a lot happening inside their head and they're trying to keep their face pretty still so they don't give anything away while they're working out how they're going to lie to you, or they're working out how to manipulate you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've heard that called like a narcissistic stare before. I'm going to call it the stare of a liar.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's a definite look.
And a lot of women have seen this over the years, but they don't know what to make of it and they don't know what they're looking at, right?
Mhm.
When they see it. So 5 years go by after this affair and things are just not getting better. And then you go looking for help. How did you find BTR?
I went to just Apple Podcasts and just searched for betrayal trauma. And that was the same time too. It took about 5 years to ever even hear the word betrayal trauma. And I had been to plenty of counselors, religious leaders. I'd been to groups that my church put on. I hadn't heard of betrayal trauma before either.
After that initial porn incident where you found out about it a month after you were married, did you see any other porn use or that was it and then he hit it really well after that?
What he would do is he would just let me in on enough of the truth that it would pass. So I always knew that he had a pornography problem or that he would view it, but he would say, I look at it once every 3 to 6 months, and that's all. And I don't have a problem. Or every once in a while, he'd go talk to our religious leader and he would tell me that. And so I thought, oh, okay, he's honest with me. And I used to say, if you look at it, tell me, or if you're struggling, let's talk about it. But it was really interesting because in our relationship, he very rarely initiate like sex. He just wasn't affectionate. And I'd always think like, what is wrong with me? Everyone else I hear about, their husband can't keep their hands off of them. What's wrong with me? And come to find out, he was looking at it more than he was saying. He was masturbating once a week and he had never brought that up. So he's like taking care of his own self and not at all interested in a like emotional relationship with someone else.
Your experience is actually more common when it comes to a porn user. A lot of women think like, oh, he just wants sex all the time because he's into porn. I would say, generally speaking, you get one or the other. Someone who wants to have sex like more than is healthy. And then
Uh-huh.
the other situation where they just don't seem interested, they don't initiate, they're not planning dates, they're not interested in you as a person. Like they don't get you gifts for Christmas, where it's just
Mhm.
sort of like, who am I to you? I remember asking my ex once while we were married, how do you show me that you care? And he had that blank look on his face for a minute. And then guess what he said? I mow the lawn.
Oh.
And I was like,
That
"You
does
have to mow the lawn anyway. You would mow it for yourself, so that's not a thing."
Oh,
So,
yeah.
as you know porn is an issue over the years, did you go down the pornography addiction recovery route for a while?
Not at first. I thought everyone looks at pornography, and he just does it sometimes. During that time after I found out about porn use, before I found out about the affair, my sister-in-law left my brother over pornography. And I talked to her and just said, this is so ridiculous that you're leaving him over this. And I got really mad and it ruined our relationship. And now looking back, wow, I have a really different view now. We went to addiction recovery after I found out about the affair.
Is this with the church, like a church
Mhm.
program? Okay.
Mhm.
Did you find that his behaviors got any better? That he used that to groom you?
A little bit. Yeah, he did go to addiction recovery group a little bit, like, throughout the course of our marriage, but he would just kinda go to a meeting here and there, and then he would say he didn't need it, and it wasn't helpful to him. But when we started going after the affair, it made a little bit of a difference, not a lot.
And I would say that was grooming. Where you think it helped a little bit would be that he was able to use the language that he learned there to groom you a little bit. He was able to weaponize those things in order to make you feel like he was getting better when he actually wasn't.
Yes, totally.
We find that using therapy, using addiction recovery, using even clergy meetings, if they genuinely want to hide their behaviors, they're going to use that to groom and they're just going to learn the language. Some guys are even using the language of mindfulness or yoga or I'm so emotionally healthy. Like, I think a real red flag on any dating platform is if someone says they're very interested in emotional health.
Ah.
It's because they've had a woman partner who was like, hey, we need to be healthy. And they've been to therapy and they've learned the language and they use it to weaponize. Because if you meet a man who's like, oh, my previous spouse was emotionally unhealthy. She wasn't caring. She wasn't this. She wasn't that. Then that new partner is going to be like, well, I'm caring. I'm understanding. And that is just grooming right out of the gate. They like weaponizing this therapy language, the recovery language, like not the enemy, porn is the enemy.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
not the enemy, Satan is the enemy. And I agree, Satan is the enemy and porn is the enemy, but you are on that side. You're behind enemy lines. You're dangerous to me.
Yeah, it's interesting what you'd say about him using therapy language because he would use these terms and it would drive me crazy. Because I'm like, you sound like just a record. Like you just learned these terms and now you're gonna come use them on me. I just felt like not a human. Like I'm a human with emotions. You can't just use these pre-recorded terms with me.
So we come from the same faith tradition where we believe that before we came to earth, Satan tried to overthrow God in the pre-existence. In our faith tradition, we believe that Satan really understands God's plan. Like he understands the commandments, he understands all of it. He just doesn't apply any of it. And I think that that's what these guys are like. They understand the therapy language, they understand all the clergy stuff, they read the Bible, they know all the scriptures, but it doesn't actually lead them to repentance, similar to Satan. He knows all these things, he just doesn't ever repent. It never changes. And I think without the application, without actually having a change of heart and really being actually converted, of course, Satan's going to stay the same no matter what he knows. So, the scary thing about porn addiction recovery, the scary thing about therapy, the scary thing about reading your scriptures more or anything like that is if you're not going to apply them, you just become more and more dangerous.
Absolutely.
So, when did you realize that common marriage advice, Christian marriage advice, like love, serve, forgive, be understanding, when did you realize that that just was not working?
Right after I found out about the affair, we started going to a counselor. He actually said, okay, what happened is not good, but we're going to move forward now. And he said to me, you can never talk about the past. I don't want you to bring it up. When you do, you're just damaging your future if you bring up the past to your husband. He actually told my husband if I wouldn't stop talking about it, that he could just get up and leave and like leave me.
What?
This is a counselor.
He doesn't know that stonewalling is apparently
Oh,
emotional and psychological abuse, I guess, this
it
guy.
was horrible,
Yeah.
horrible. And my husband, of course, he loved this counselor. And so when I would talk about the past, and he's like, no, you're burning down the cornfield. This is what he said. He said, you have a cornfield, and every time you talk about the past, you burn it down, and then you guys have to start over. So it was really on me. And it wasn't on my husband at all. It was just kind of like, okay, you made a mistake. Let's move forward. You're forgiven. He was from the same faith background we were from. And also, our religious leader at church had referred this counselor. So my husband was very stuck on the religious aspect of this religious leader referred him. So he must be who we need to go to. And I kept saying, like, this is not helpful. This is very damaging.
Let's talk about the spiritual abuse. So here you are being abused by your husband, psychologically and emotionally abused, sexual coercion as well, with your counselor, who is a religious counselor, with your bishop, who is your religious leader. So you're being abused by these men who are trying to tell you what your experience is and trying to coerce you into thinking that you're not being abused. Did you get it from family as well? Like, were you facing spiritual abuse on all sides?
Not necessarily from family, but I do have to say, not one family member has ever told me that maybe I should leave my husband. Everyone has brought into the situation, forgive, what would Jesus do kind of thing. It's all repent, read your scriptures, pray, God will get you through this.
What would Jesus do? I'm always thinking, he says, depart from the wicked, is what he says. He says, separate yourselves from wickedness. So what would Jesus do? He would say, get thee hence.
Yeah.
So I need to get myself hence from this. When you found BTR, is this like a revelation?
I can't even tell you, just listening to your podcast and feeling like, first of all, I'm not crazy. Second of all, I'm not alone. There's other people that have been through this because it's such a lonely place to be. There's not very many people you can talk to. I feel like it's so hard because even though it is my story, it's not only my story. So I can't talk about the truth about him to everyone because then I tarnish my husband or make him look bad. Like nobody really knows what's going on because you can't talk about it. So it's such a lonely place. And then for me, all these therapists I'm going to make me feel even worse. So just to be able to have someone I could connect with, just to listen to podcasts and feel like I'm not alone. And wow, I'm really not crazy. That was so, so big.
I'm so happy that you found us. We always want women to find us because when you're in that fog of abuse and you're being abused from all sides, it is so hard to figure out what's going on. And even if you do want to tell people, I'm not saying that you should, but let's just say that you got it in your mind that you were going to get up in your meeting at church from the pulpit and say, everyone, I'm being psychologically abused. They would not believe you. So you can start telling people, but then people just look at you like you're crazy. So it's so nice to be part of a community where you're immediately believed. And not just believed, you don't even have to explain it. We just get it. It's so freeing. And then I think the more we validate each other and empower each other, the stronger we get over time. And then it makes it so much easier over time to see it and help us make decisions about what to do to get to safety.
Absolutely.
The purpose of this podcast is not to proselyte. We're all just here sharing from our own experience. So the point of me talking to her is just sharing my own experience and my own views. And we respect that everyone has different views around here. As you've heard on the podcast, women come from all different religions or different paradigms or no religion. Everyone is welcome here. So where are you now in your situation? Do you feel like you've established some peace, or do you feel like you're still sort of being cycled through the abuse?
It's still a cycle. I have established more peace. I have definitely been able to recognize my relationship for what it is. I am able to recognize patterns and behaviors that before I wouldn't have recognized what they were. But it's really hard. It's so hard. I've never been able to get to the point where I can make a concrete decision to stay or to go. Sometimes I almost wish I would find him in another affair so that I could have that reason of, okay, I really can leave. But right now it's like this in between where I feel like exactly what you're saying earlier. He's aware of what he needs to do, but he hasn't fully made that commitment. He still blames me. It's so hard. I have kids, and it's been now 7 years.
7 years since the affair.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes I think back, wow, what if I would have been strong enough to just leave then? Well, how different would my kids' lives be? I've been so intent on giving them married parents and a family. And then I think back and I'm like, wow, maybe I've made a really big mistake staying together and modeling this kind of behavior to my kids of what's okay in a relationship. That's really hard. So I'm like in this limbo where I just never am fully committed to stay or to go.
It's really hard. Many women have prayed to know, do I stay or do I go? And then a lot of women avoid praying about it because they don't want an answer, because either answer is terrible.
Yep.
Number one, if it's stay, then you have to stay in an abusive place. Number two, is that really God telling you to stay? Because I've had so many women say, I prayed about it and God wants me to stay. And I'm thinking, I'm not here to doubt your spiritual impressions. But at the same time, like, the abuse messes with women's minds so much that sometimes they can't even ferret out what they're feeling. And really what they're feeling is it feels bad to divorce. So they're feeling like, I know when I think about divorce, it feels wrong. So that must not be right. So I guess God's telling me to stay married. And with that, I want to say, no, no, no. If the answer you're getting is this terrible, awful feeling when you think about divorce, that does not mean God is telling you not to divorce. And the reason why that is because divorce is going to feel bad no matter what. I would encourage women and have them consider that if you get a terrible, awful feeling when you think about divorce, consider that that is not God telling you not to do it. After you say, okay, no matter what, it's going to feel awful. Then how do you sort out what God wants you to do? And I have no idea. I have no idea.
I don't either.
I just don't want the abuse making the decisions, because the abuse is you're not good enough, you can't do it. All of these things that are in your head, that have been in your head forever, that you don't even realize aren't even you. They're just shadows of the abuse from over time. So it's very, very hard to sort out what to do. But I do think that God will lead us and direct us and guide us as we make our way towards safety. And if we say, hey, this is what I want a peaceful, happy life. Please guide me and direct me toward that. What do you want me to do? What's my next step? I think he'll guide us wherever he wants us to go. But just as a wholesale overview of that bad feeling, you're going to feel that regardless, even if divorce is the best thing for you. So all of you listeners now that are like, well, I was thinking about divorce, but now that you said that, as a woman of faith, I believe that God has a path and a way to safety for you. I just don't know what that looks like. And that's why I pulled together the Clarity After Betrayal Workshop, because so many women that I interviewed were like, I wish I had known this. So for those of you listening, to learn what they wish they knew, go to btr.org/clarity. And this is for women who are still married, who are separated or divorced, because I interviewed women at all different stages. And I've seen so many miracles in so many women's lives and in my own life. He's there for us, but it's hard and it's scary.
Yeah, I like the idea of just kind of praying for the next step, just one step at a time.
Have you reconciled with your sister-in-law, your brother's ex-wife?
No, they ended up getting divorced, and I haven't talked to her in years. I think about it and I'm kind of scared just how the relationship was left. But I do think that I should just go and tell her I'm sorry for the things that I assumed and now have such a different view. He never took responsibility for his actions. The whole reason he looked at pornography was her fault, because she didn't want to have sex with him, or she wasn't interested in it as much as he was. And so he had no other option. It was just this what he had to do. And I've never heard him say otherwise.
I'm so entitled to sex that I have to have it. This is my wife's job.
Right. And if she won't do it, it's entirely her fault. They've been divorced 10 years now and nothing's changed. Now I can see it for what it is.
Now that you see that, have you noticed any men that are healthy?
Well, sometimes I think, do they even exist? Like, are there mentally stable men out there? I'm trying to think.
That question is also scary. And the reason why that's scary is that you're going to need help. And if you don't have people in your life that are healthy that can see it for what it is, it's scary to start doing that on your own.
Absolutely.
A lot of women, once they figure out what abuse is, they're like, I don't know a man who's not abusive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to say that I have several men in my life now that are not abusive, and they're supportive. And the more I've learned about abuse, the more I've been able to recognize healthy men as well. Now, of course, I'm not married to them, so I don't know for sure. But in terms of my interaction, and then also what their wife says about them, I think there are healthy men out there is what I'm trying to say. But I also think that they're not common. In the state where you and I live in, 1 out of every 3 women has experienced physical abuse. So then emotional and psychological abuse even more. And the statistics are that 8 out of every 10 men in our state is using porn.
Wow.
So then you're looking at 8 out of every 10 men is an abuser, essentially, is willing to manipulate, is willing to lie, is willing to throw somebody under the bus to save their own reputation.
Scary statistics.
If you could go back and talk to your younger self, now that you know what you know from listening to the podcast and being a member of our community, what would you tell her?
I wish that she could see her worth and know that within herself, that she's a worthy person without someone else needing to tell her that she is. I wish that I could tell her to recognize red flags and see them for what they are. There are so many red flags looking back. Even if I saw them, I think deep down it's like I've never felt like I deserved better. That's sad.
In our faith tradition, we have this thing that we stand up in Young Women's, and it says, I am a beloved daughter of heavenly parents with a divine nature and eternal destiny. As a disciple of Jesus Christ, I strive to become like him. I seek to act upon personal revelation and minister to others in his holy name. I will stand as a witness of God at all times. I'm getting a little emotional here, sorry. I will stand as a witness of God at all times and in all things and in all places. I'm a beloved daughter. This is more focused now on service than it was when we were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Ours was like, I am very valuable.
Yeah.
This one actually doesn't sound like that anymore. But
it doesn't.
So we grew up with this, like, I am a very valuable daughter of God. Why do you think that didn't sink in for us?
Why? I I think sometimes if you just recite something over and over, you don't really spend the time to think about what you're saying.
I also think it's how we were treated.
Oh, yeah,
So if
absolutely.
they say you're so valuable, but then you're not actually treated as you're valuable, like they're not listening to your opinion, they're not believing you. They'll pay for your brother to go to college, but they won't pay for you to go to college. Your brother gets to choose a career of any of these 5,000 different careers. And you need to pick a teacher because then you would have the summers off for your kids. And you need to be able to cook and sew and clean and do laundry. And your duties are relegated to childcare, cleaning, cooking. And what does he want to do?
The
He
whole
gets to be
world,
an
yeah.
engineer, an astronaut. Like, what are his dreams and hopes? And yours should be laundry. So I don't know,
Mhm.
like nobody ever says, like, what do you genuinely want to do with your life?
No.
Like, what are you interested in? Who are you as a person? What talents has God given you apart from He's given you the ability to be a mother, right?
Mhm.
And then, so it's like, were you actually treated like you were valuable? And so then, if in our hearts and minds we're thinking, okay, we're really valued, but we're only valued if we look like this or if we do this thing. And if we do it really well, and you know what? I'm not super great at cooking brownies. So maybe I'm not as valuable as the congregation brownie baker. I just wonder if that's part of it. The way that we internalize the culture around us was like, oh, this is how you get valued as a woman. If you want it, you've got to be cute and you've got to be in shape and you have to play the harp.
It's so true. That's really interesting you bring that up because the week ago at church, we were having a lesson about things of value and how we treat things differently on how much we value them. And we came home from church and I said to my husband, I don't feel valued as a wife, as a human. For me, it was such a big epiphany to just think I've spent these last 20 years of my life with someone that doesn't value me,
Doesn't cherish us.
right? Yeah, how differently would my life turn out if I was with someone that really valued me, truly.
And I think that's why we have to learn to value ourselves because nobody's doing it for us.
Right, exactly.
When we do, and we're like, no, I'm going to do this thing, everybody around us is like, what? No, no, no. You're not valuing your husband. I think the heart of this is also just flat out misogyny. I think that's the problem with a lot of the pornography addiction recovery situation is that they're not acknowledging this super solid bedrock foundation of misogyny
Absolutely.
that is so firm and so strong and so deep that it's going through the clergy and the therapists and the community, and it's making it very difficult for women to value themselves. And then when you start doing it, then you're the crazy
Oh,
apostate
yeah.
lady.
How have you been able to keep your faith and your spirituality? That is something I've struggled with so much through this because I do feel like my religion has really spiritually manipulated me into feeling like I'm not of much value. I need to forgive, move on. And I've really struggled with my spirituality through this. Is there things that have helped you?
I love studying about my savior. Sometimes I think like, ugh, what am I doing this for? All these men don't get it. But as I study, I really feel God's love for me in my own journal. I pray and ask Heavenly Father what He wants to tell me, and then I write down the impressions that I receive. And I consider that my own personal scriptures. So even though it's still on that solid, seemingly immovable bedrock of misogyny, I do think the Lord's words come through. The other thing that I love about the scriptures is it says so clearly that God does not like wickedness. Over and over and over, both the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Book of Mormon, stories over and over of deliverance. The Lord has a plan for us. I don't know what it is exactly. I'm just going to do my part. So I just think I don't know the answer to so many of these things. Of course, I don't. Why would I? But I think that's what's helped me keep my faith because I just can't imagine that God doesn't have a plan for our deliverance if He's had a plan for oppressed people's deliverance since the very beginning of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something to think about. I like that a lot. That's helpful.
I have a lot of friends who have left their faith, and I don't blame them. There's no judgment for me because I think I don't know why I still believe and you don't, but like we're still sisters. Did your sister in law leave the church?
Yes, she did. Yeah.
So I think that would be another thing as you attempt to reconcile with her is to have a really soft place in your heart for that and be like, it makes sense that you would do that after all of the abuse that you suffered from my brother, from my family, from other church members. Like, I totally get it. I can see why you would do that because that's going to be a further bridge to reconciliation rather than like, well, I'm staying in the church because I'm more righteous and I have more faith than you after all the misogyny I've experienced and all the terrible things, but somehow I'm a better person than you because I can put up with it or something. Like the women who have said, "Hey, I am done." Like, good for you for standing up for yourself. Good for you for saying, "I don't have to take this anymore. I don't have to take this abuse. I'm not doing this anymore." So, in terms of how I feel about it, I think every woman can make her own way to safety in whatever way that looks like for her. And sometimes, frankly, I'm a little bit confused about why I still believe like I do. I've suffered tons of oppression from men for my views, especially now that the podcast is so big and that I seem very threatening to a lot of therapists or other people, and my views seem very threatening. And some people see me as some kind of like ultra crazy podcaster that their wife started listening to. And after she started listening to this like wackadoodle podcaster, our family was ruined.
Well, what's interesting about that is, yes, of course, the husbands don't like us finding you because we find the truth.
Hmm.
We understand the abuse for what it is. And when we come and confront them and say, I listened to this podcast and she said this. So, yeah, my husband is not a fan of the podcast because it totally
I know.
it exposes him for what he is, and he doesn't like that one bit.
So I become this crazy, like, extremist who's podcasting from my basement, who, believes in aliens. I don't believe in aliens, but I mean, like, people have that view of it, right? No, actually, like, this is pretty mainstream, like, basic abuse stuff. If you talk to any abuse expert, they'll be like, yeah, yeah, of course. This is not extreme. It's not out there. There's nothing about it that is counterculture. I mean, our faith tradition says we do not tolerate abuse. It's just so, so threatening to an abuser for a victim to find out the truth about what's going on.
Yeah, it blows his cover. They can't get away with what they used to get away with. It's really confusing to them because behavior that's worked in the past doesn't work anymore. When we can recognize it and see what's being done and how we're being manipulated, it has really changed my relationship. It really has since I've started listening to the podcast and just being able to recognize it and being able to feel more self-worth because of all the gaslighting. I have felt like I'm just the crazy one, that there's no validity to my thoughts and emotions. Being able to recognize that my thoughts and emotions and feelings are valid gives me a lot more strength to be able to stand up and recognize that, yeah, I do have worth and my thoughts, they're not crazy. They're actually less crazy. They're the truth, is what they are. They're true.
Well, and from a spiritual perspective, that is God telling you that you are of worth. And listen to that part. Listen to how much He loves you and He cares about you, and you don't have to put up with literal chaos and pain coming from someone who enjoys wickedness. We were talking about submission before, like on a previous episode. And essentially, if you are listening to your abuser and you're submitting yourself to him and okay, I'll have more sex, or okay, I'll lose weight, or okay, I won't ask you questions and I don't know, whatever they want that's unrighteous, you're submitting yourself to evil, which God never asked us to do, ever.
Right.
The cool thing is the more of us there are, the stronger we become and the less weird it is. And so we just need to keep walking forward. And when one of us gets to safety, it helps all of us. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today.
It's been really healing just to be able to talk about it and express myself. I really appreciate it.